There are moments when the universe doesn't ask for permission, it just. And if this message reached you today, if your eyes are scanning these words at this very moment, it's no coincidence. Something has just been signed in your field. Something that doesn't depend on your faith, but flourishes when you acknowledge it. In this video, you're going to discover why this week isn't an ordinary week and how to activate consciously the wealth that has already been sealed for you. But there's one detail almost no one understands, and only at the end will you grasp why this signature bears your name. If you feel this message found you for a reason, right? Wealth already recognizes me. Take a deep because this has already begun. Centuries ago, long before the world filled with noise and haste, long before humanity began to measure time in meetings, notifications, and endless to-do lists, there were traditions that observed time in a radically different way than we do today. Today, they didn't count days on a calendar. They didn't divide life into work, weeks, and weekends. They read the energies inhabiting each moment like someone reading the currents beneath the surface of a calm river. They knew not all moments are equal. They knew there are periods when the universe's vibrational field leans toward certain souls in a special, unrepeatable, exact way. Tibetan monks who spent decades in silence meditating on the nature of time. Mayan sages who built calendars capable of mapping cosmic cycles with a precision that still astounds astronomers modern. Sufi masters who described divine love as a force that selects and marks those who are ready to be instruments of transformation. All of them, from different geographies, from different languages, from different centuries, spoke of the same thing. They spoke of a moment in the lives of certain people when the universe descended upon their field and placed what some traditions called the invisible signature, what others described as the seal of destiny, what still others simply named as the moment when heaven touches earth in a specific human being. And what unified all these descriptions, what made this concept appear in cultures that never had contact with each other, was a common characteristic. That signature was not a symbol drawn on the skin, nor a word engraved in stone, nor a visible mark for the eyes of the body. It was an energetic impression, a footprint that anchored itself in the deepest vibrational field of a person at an exact in their history, not at just any instant, but at the precise instant when something within that person reached a level of inner maturity that the universe recognizes even if the conscious mind doesn't notice it. The oldest records that speak of this phenomenon also describe the conditions that precede it, and this is where the story becomes deeply personal for you, because these conditions aren't about external greatness. They're not about accumulated achievements or achieved perfection. They're conditions of a journey. The signature appeared, the masters said, when a person had gone through enough trials without losing their essence, when they had endured prolonged silences that no one around them seemed to understand, when they had losses that taught them life goes on, even if the pain says otherwise, when they had felt doubt so profound they gnawed from within, and yet in some small, irrational corner of their being, they kept choosing to continue. not because they were certain things would get better, but because something within them refused to give up completely. That small fire that keeps burning, not out of heroic bravery, but out of a silent loyalty to something that still has no name. That was the sign the universe was looking for. That was the threshold. And there was something else the ancient texts mention, something most who have studied these traditions superficially haven't paid enough attention to. They said that before the signature arrived, the person experienced a strange feeling of inner pause, not necessarily peace, not euphoria, but a pause as if internal time stopped for an inexplicable moment, as if something within them knew that something outside was about to change irreversibly, as if the soul before the mind received the news. That pause wasn't emptiness. It was the space that the universe created to place the signature without interference. It was the moment when all the pieces of a puzzle that had been building for years in invisible dimensions fell into place simultaneously. And the deepest mystery of all this, the one the masters emphasized more insistently than any other, was this: the signature never arrived when someone asked for it in desperation. It never arrived when someone negotiated with the divine out of fear or urgency. It arrived when someone was genuinely ready to hold it, when the person had developed internally, through every trial and every silence and every doubt overcome, the real capacity to receive without collapsing, to grow without losing their center, to expand without disintegrating. Today, something in your life reached that point. Not tomorrow, not at some future moment when you finally have everything figured out. Today, something in your story, in everything you lived, in every decision you made, even if you didn't quite know why. Every time you chose to continue when you had enough reasons to stop, opened this door. And this message, at this exact instant, is the confirmation that this door is no longer just open. It's waiting for you to step through to the other side. If you feel your path brought you here for something greater, right, I know the signature within me for a long time, perhaps longer than you'd honestly care to admit if you stopped to count. You felt like you're moving forward, but without fully arriving, that you make real, genuine, sustained efforts that other people around you wouldn't even try, but the results seem to be delayed without a logical explanation that satisfies your mind. And that experience generates something very specific, a fatigue that isn't just physical. It's a fatigue of the soul, the fatigue of the soul, the fatigue of someone who has given their best for a long time and still sees the distance between where they are and where they feel they should be. And that fatigue, if you felt it, is not a sign that you're failing. It's the symptom of something much deeper that no one explained to you correctly, a vibrational conflict that operates below the level of ordinary consciousness, invisible to the mind, but absolutely decisive for the results that come into your life. Think of it this way: a part of you, the part that found this message, the part that searches, reads, aspires, dreams, was asking for wealth with words, with affirmations, with visualizations, with prayers, with the genuine and honest desire to live differently. But at the same time, in deeper layers of your internal system, layers that formed long before you had the conscious ability to choose what to believe. Another voice learned not out of malice, but from repeated experience that life is difficult, that good things go away, that abundance is for others, for those who were born in the right place, for those who had the right connections, for those who somehow elusively didn't manage to identify they deserved more than you. That voice isn't your enemy. It never was. That voice was a mechanism of protection, a system your mind installed during vulnerable moments to prevent disappointment from destroying you. If you don't expect too much, it doesn't hurt as much when things don't happen. That was the logic. And at the time, it served its purpose. But the problem is that system of protection doesn't distinguish between past and present. It doesn't know you grew up. It doesn't know that the conditions changed. It doesn't know that what you needed as a child to survive is no longer what you need as an adult to flourish. And so, while one part of you asked for wealth with all its might, the other part silently sabotaged that request from within, generating exactly the interference that prevented the flow. Quantum physicists call this phenomenon destructive interference, two waves that cancel each other out when they're in phase opposition. Spiritual masters have called it many things throughout history. Inner war, divided heart, the hand that gives and the hand that simultaneously withdraws. The name doesn't matter as much as the recognition, because recognizing this conflict, seeing it with clarity and without judgment, is the first real step towards its dissolution. And there's something crucial you need to know about how this process works. It's not about eliminating the voice of the fear with brute force. Trying to silence that voice with pure willpower is like trying to sink a cork in water. The more pressure you apply, the more it bounces back. The real path is different. It's about recognizing that voice, understanding where it comes from, appreciating the role it played at the time, and then with the same calm you'd use to comfort a scared child, tell it that you no longer need its protection in that way, that you now have other tools, that the world that voice knew is no longer the world you live in. That process of recognition and liberation doesn't happen in an instant, but it does have a starting instant, and that instant can be right now. Right now, as these words are reaching you, something in your field is processing a truth that has long been waiting to be seen. And when a truth is finally seen with clarity, the conflict that concealed it begins to lose its power. It doesn't disappear overnight, but its influence on your vibrational field begins to dissolve irreversibly. The blocked flow begins to find its way like water that finally finds a crack in the rock and starts to break through, slowly but unstoppably. If this truth describes something you've carried for too long, right, I see my old resistance. There's a belief so deeply ingrained in collective culture that almost no one stops to question it. It's a belief passed down from generation to generation, so naturally that it seems not to be a belief, but a fact of reality. And that belief says the following: wealth is the direct and proportional result of sustained effort. Whoever works harder deserves more. Whoever sacrifices more receives. Whoever postpones their happiness the most in the name of productivity will eventually be rewarded with abundance. And while effort has its place and dignity in any walk of life, that belief alone is profoundly incomplete, and its incompleteness is not a minor detail. It's exactly the crack through which all the unnecessary suffering seeps in, that millions of people carry when they strive without proportional results and conclude that the problem is they didn't try hard enough, when in reality the problem was on a completely different level. Because if effort were the only determining variable, all hard-working people would live in abundance. And you know perfectly well that's not the case. There are people who work from dawn until midnight for entire decades and never experience the wealth their effort would seem to deserve. And there are people who seem to generate abundance with an ease that, from the outside, appears incomprehensible. The difference isn't in the effort, it's in the internal relationship with abundance. It's in the frequency from which one acts. It's in the identity from which one lives. What the world's oldest spiritual traditions have taught in different languages and from different geographies, what modern quantum physics is beginning to articulate in scientific terms, what studies on epigenetics and neuroplasticity are documenting in laboratories, is this. A person's internal state is not simply a consequence of their external reality, it's one of its main creative factors, or vibrational, the sum of all the beliefs you hold, of all the emotions you habitually feed, of all the stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you deserve, and what's possible for someone like you. That field is the signal that you constantly emit into the fabric of reality, and reality, like a mirror with infinite dimensions, responds to that signal with experiences that confirm it. If your signal says scarcity, even if your words speak of abundance, what arrives is scarcity. If your signal says you don't deserve, even if your affirmations say you deserve everything, what you experience reflects that deep belief. This isn't superficial positive thinking. It's not the simplistic idea that if you smile, everything will be fixed. It's a sophisticated understanding of how the relationship works between a human being's internal state and the possibilities that organize around them. And here's the revelation that changes everything. The one that masters have repeated 1,000 different ways, because it's so counterintuitive that the mind always takes time to fully grasp it. Abundance isn't pursued, it's allowed. That distinction isn't poetic or decorative, it's technical. Pursuing something implies that it's far away, that there's a real distance between you and it, that it needs to be reached with effort and speed. Allowing something implies recognizing that it's already available, that the real obstacle was internal, that the door was always there, and all that was missing was letting go of the resistance that kept it from opening. And resistance to abundance isn't seen, it isn't felt like resistance. It feels like realism. It feels like maturity. It feels like the voice of reason that says, keep your expectations low so you don't get disappointed. But that voice, though well-intentioned, is exactly what keeps the door closed, because the universe doesn't respond to your words. It doesn't respond to your declared intentions. It responds to the frequency you truly hold at every moment. And that frequency is determined by what you truly believe deep within you about what's possible for your life. When that belief changes, when you genuinely, not just intellectually, begin to hold yourself from the certainty that abundance is your natural state, not a privilege you have to earn. Your external reality has no choice but to reorganize itself accordingly, not because the universe is your employee, but because there's a fundamental coherence in how reality works. Reality. And that coherence operates in your favor when your internal field aligns with the frequency of abundance. And there's something else you need to hear. The universe isn't just starting to work for you today. It was already doing it long before you found this message, long before you even started looking for answers. The signature placed in your field doesn't create wealth from scratch as if there was nothing before. It opens the door that was blocked from within, which means something is already on its way. It's already organizing itself in layers of reality that are not yet visible to your eyes, but are completely real as the roots of a tree you can't see, but which support everything you do see. You don't need to understand everything for it to work. You don't need to see the whole path before taking the first step. You just need to be available. You just need to stop resisting what has already been sent to you. If you're ready to stop chasing and genuinely start allowing, right, I am available to receive. What's happening this week isn't an external event that will arrive from outside to visibly and immediately change your life. It's not a cosmic lottery, nor a reward falling from the sky as a consequence of having watched this video at the right time. What's happening is an internal transformation at the most fundamental level of who you are. And that distinction is probably the most important one you can grasp, not just in this video, but in your entire spiritual journey. Because most people spend years searching for abundance as if it were a lost object somewhere in the outer world, as if it existed in some magical combination of circumstances that they haven't been able to find yet. And from that external search, they go around in circles because the object they're looking for outside, it's not outside. It never was outside. True abundance, in its fullest and deepest sense, isn't the result of finding the right circumstances. It's the natural and inevitable result of inhabiting a specific identity. And that identity isn't something you fake or something you act out to convince the universe you deserve more. Instead, it's something built from within through a genuine process of transforming the most fundamental beliefs you hold about yourself and what's possible for your life. When you become someone who expects abundance, not as an anxious wish or an impatient demand, but as a quiet certainty, like the state of someone who simply knows the sun will rise tomorrow, external reality has no choice but to reorganize itself to reflect that identity, not because the universe is your personal employee who must obey you, but because there's a deep coherence in how reality works, and that coherence operates through you as much as it operates around you. Your vibrational field is literally the signal you emit to the universe at every moment, not just when you meditate or perform a ritual. Every thought you hold for more than 20 seconds, every emotion you habitually feed without questioning it, every story you tell yourself about who you are, about what you deserve, about what's possible for someone with your history, with your past, that signal is constant. And when that signal genuinely and deeply changes, the results that arrive also change, not as arbitrary magic, but as a direct consequence of a real transformation in the field you are emitting. The problem that keeps most people stuck is that they try to change results without changing identity. They try to attract more money without transforming their internal relationship with money. They try to build deeper relationships without healing beliefs about whether they deserve unconditional love. They try to create a different life from the same version of themselves that created the previous life. And that's exactly like trying to tune into a different radio station without moving the dial. The device might be expensive, it might be new, it might be technologically sophisticated, but if the dial doesn't move, the frequency doesn't change. This week marks the beginning of a real movement on that dial, not in a forced or artificial way, but organically and deeply, because the signature activated in your field isn't simply a promise of external results that will arrive if you behave well. It's an invitation to inhabit yourself in a different way, to wake up tomorrow with a vivid memory that something changed within you today, to make decisions from that new place, even if at first they're small decisions, almost imperceptible from the outside. But you'll know they come from a different place. You'll notice when the voice of fear tries to regain the ground it lost, and consciously choose at that moment not to follow it. That repeated choice in everyday moments is what solidifies this new identity, not grand gestures, not dramatic declarations, but small, everyday acts of consistency with who you're choosing. There's something spiritual masters have taught for millennia that modern neuroscience is beginning to confirm. Identity is built on the repetition of small choices. Every time you choose to respond from your most expanded version instead of reacting from fear, you are literally creating new neural connections, new patterns in the field, new response possibilities that didn't exist before. Not as a metaphor, but as a real biological and energetic. The most profound changes in a human life never begin with a big dramatic event that transforms everything overnight. They begin with an instant of inner clarity, a moment when something is seen differently, quietly reorganizing everything else from the bottom up. This is that instant, and what you do with it in the coming days will determine how far this transformation goes. If you accept this new level of yourself without no conditions, no buts, no waiting for results to come first to believe, right, I accept my new frequency. Once that signature is active in your field, reality starts to speak to you in ways that before went completely unnoticed. Not because the universe has only just started communicating with you now, not because it was silent before or indifferent to your path, but because you've started to tune into its frequency in a way that wasn't possible before. It's exactly like learning a new language. The words of that language were always in the world. They were spoken all around you. They existed in books and conversations. But until your ear develops the ability to recognize their specific patterns, they simply pass just background noise, like sound without meaning. And suddenly, the language starts to settle within you. Those same words that were once just noise, they become clear and precise messages. That's how the language of the universe works. It was always speaking. Now you can hear it. The confirmation signals, the ones that show the field is active and in motion, are rarely dramatic. They don't expect lightning in clear skies or prophetic dreams that explain everything in an orderly fashion. They manifest in the ordinary texture of our days, in those small events that the rationalist mind would dismiss as coincidences. But when you observe them with the right frequency, they reveal a coherence that cannot be a product of chance. Someone you haven't seen or thought about in years writes to you for no apparent reason, just about something you were processing internally. An idea appears in your mind with unusual clarity and completeness, just as you faced an obstacle that seemed insurmountable. A casual conversation with a stranger in the least expected place holds exactly the information you needed to solve something you'd been stuck on for weeks. A door you've been trying to force open for a while suddenly opens on its own, effortlessly, as if its time had simply come. None of this is coincidence, in the sense that it happens without cause. Everything has a cause, but the cause isn't always visible from the level of linear logic. The cause is vibrational. It's the field's response to the new frequency you're holding cooled. What masters call synchronicity, what Jung described as meaningful coincidences that connect the inner world with the outer world in ways that defy causal explanation. It's exactly this, the universe using the language of events to confirm that the field is aligned and in motion. And there's another type of signal that is even more valuable than the previous ones, even if it's more subtle, and most people don't recognize it immediately as something positive. It's unexpected detachment. There are things that used to keep you up at night, that generated chronic and sustained anxiety, that constantly drained your energy, that seemed urgent, heavy, and impossible to ignore, which suddenly lose their weight in an unexplainable way, not because the problems have necessarily disappeared, but because expanded beyond the level from which those problems seemed so big. There are situations that remained the same from the outside, but from your new inner self, they no longer feel the same way. There are people whose opinion of you had the power to completely alter your emotional state, and now they simply no longer have that effect. There are worries that used to take up a huge space in your mind and now seem to have naturally reduced in size. This isn't indifference. It's not emotional coldness or spiritual disconnection. It's expansion. When consciousness grows, when identity expands into broader versions of itself, there are things that simply no longer fit into that new space in the same way they used to fill it. Like when a person grows physically and the clothes that fit them perfectly no longer serve them, it's not that the clothes are bad, it's that the person grew, and that space that is freed, old worries lose their weight. It's not emptiness or loss, it's the preparation for what's coming. Because the new can't settle in a field that's still completely occupied by the old. In the coming days, pay attention to something else. Pay attention to your dreams, to the images appearing between sleep, and to the intuitions that emerge without apparent logic, but feel absolutely certain on a level you can't explain. Pay attention to what your body feels before your mind processes it. because the body has access to information that the conscious mind receives with delay. Pay attention to the conversations that impact you in ways disproportionate to their apparent importance, superficial, because those conversations often contain specific messages for where you are on your path right now. The field is active, the signature is anchored, and the universe is using all available channels to confirm that what was sealed is real. If in the coming days you start to notice these signs, write, I'm seeing the universe's signs. Receiving is only half the journey, and it's the easier half. The other half, which almost no spiritual tradition teaches clearly enough, the one that almost no video about abundance addresses with the depth it deserves, is to sustain. Because the universe can open extraordinary doors. It can align circumstances that once seemed impossible. It can place exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, right in your path. But if your inner identity hasn't grown enough to navigate what's on the other side of those doors without collapsing, without sabotaging it, without unconsciously finding a way to return to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is suffering, those doors close on their own, not as a punishment, not as a sign that the universe has withdrawn its favor, but as a natural adjustment between what was received and your actual capacity to sustain it. Abundance that reaches a level exceeding your capacity to sustain it simply returns to its origin, like water inevitably overflowing a container not built to hold it. And the capacity to sustain isn't measured by willpower or desire. It's measured by internal coherence, by the alignment between what you say you believe, what you truly feel at the deepest levels of your being, and the daily decisions you make when no one is watching you and when no one would applaud you for making them. That's why the true spiritual work doesn't end with activation. Activation is just the beginning. What you build after it, in the days and weeks following this moment, is what determines how far the transformation goes. To sustain means actively and deliberately choosing trust, especially and above all, in the moments when doubt returns. Not if doubt returns, but when it returns, because it will. Doubt is an organic part of the transformation process, not evidence that something went wrong or that the activation didn't work. It's the voice of your previous identity trying to regain ground, trying to return to what's known, because the unknown, even if it's better, activates the alert system of the brain, which was programmed to prioritize survival over expansion. To sustain means recognizing that voice when it appears, not fighting it because fighting it gives it more strength, but simply noticing it, naming it, and consciously choosing not to follow it at that precise moment. That act of conscious choice, repeated in everyday moments, is what solidifies the new identity in a way that no ritual or affirmation can do on its own. Sustaining also means speaking to yourself with the same dignity and the same respect you would speak to someone you deeply love, not just in moments of success or expansion, but in moments of error, in moments of fatigue, in moments when results are not yet visible, and the temptation to conclude it was all a deception is highest. Because the way you speak to yourself in those difficult moments is exactly the signal that determines if the field continues to hold a new frequency or returns to the previous one. Sustaining also means something many forget: acting from the new level before the results of the new level are visible, not waiting for abundance to arrive first to start behaving like someone who already receives it, not waiting for money to appear to start making decisions from the mindset of someone who manages abundance, not waiting for love to arrive to start treating yourself like someone who deserves to be loved. Identity precedes results, always, without exception. When you act from the calm certainty of someone who already is their most expanded version, even if external results don't yet confirm that version, the vibrational field you project changes in a real and measurable way, and that shift reorganizes the possibilities the universe can bring your way. There's a spiritual law that masters from traditions as diverse as Vedanta, Sufism, Zen Buddhism, Kabbalah, and shamanic traditions have described in different words, but always pointing to the same principle. What you honor multiplies, not because the universe keeps a tally of your merits, but because the attention you hold on something is and energy inevitably feeds what it consistently flows towards. If you honor your inner wealth, if you treat it as real even if it's not yet fully visible on the physical plane, if you make daily decisions that are consistent with that inner reality, abundance has no choice but to expand. If, on the contrary, you distrust it every time it appears, if you expect it to disappear as it always has, if you minimize it so you won't be disappointed, it responds to that frequency with equal accuracy. The universe doesn't judge, it simply, and the most honest question you can ask yourself right now isn't whether the universe supports you, but whether you are supporting yourself with the same consistency you expect the universe to do so. The choice of how you uphold this new version of yourself in easy times and in difficult ones, when everything confirms your expansion and when everything seems to contradict it, that's the most important decision you can make from this moment on. And it's not a decision you make just once, definitively and forever. It's a decision that is consciously renewed every morning, in every thought you choose to hold, in every conversation you choose to have, in every moment when fear offers you a path back to the familiar and you choose to stay in the new. If today you choose to honor this new version of yourself unconditionally, right, I honor the richness that lives within me. This message didn't arrive by accident. It found you because something in you was already ready. Remember this: you're not waiting for wealth. You're remembering that it was activated. Hold your frequency. Trust your process. Allow this week to reveal what was already signed. If you wish to keep walking in this frequency, subscribe and become part of this community of awakening souls. The universe has already signed, and you are ready to receive.